Sabi pong sa pagkakaroon ng East Asian Financial Crisis, nagkaroon ng problema sa transmission, nagkaroon ng mataas na presyo ng kuryente, tapos merong mataas na systems losses, at sinasabi na nasundan ito ng sobrang generating capacity noong 1997. Ito po ay ayon sa datos ng Joint Foreign Chambers of Commerce. Ito rin po naman ang naging dahilan upang magkaroon ng restructuring sa power sector na kinasangkutan ng paghihiwalay ng industriya sa tatlo, yung generation, yung transmission at distribution. Nagkaroon din ng kompetisyon. At ito po naman ay sa generation at sinimulan yung wholesale electricity spot market o WESM. Isinapribado ang generation at pagpapatakbo ng transmission na napunta sa isang concessionaire. Okay? Sa pagkakataong ito, maituturing bang step in the right direction ang ginawa sa nakalipas na mga panahon? Ayon pa rin po naman sa informasyon, sa pagkakaroon ng mga problemang ito, merong ginawang solusyon ang ating pamahalaan. Yan ang pag-uusapan natin ngayon. At magkakaroon po ng mga presentation ng ating mga panauhin na naririto. Maganda po kasing mapakinggan natin sa kanila kung ano talaga ang sitwasyon at kung ano ang kailangan sapagkat, teka, may nalaglag yata ang mikropono rin sa kabila. Ngayon po umagang ito sa atin sa Tapatan sa Aristocrat, ang ating tema nakuryente ba ang kuryente? Ano ba nangyari? Nag-ground ba tayo? So, yun ang paksa. Narito po si Binibining Luningning ng Nakuryente. Kasi sandali, naburay. Sandali. Mula sa Department of Energy. Okay? Alam nyo, bagay ganitong excited ako at maraming panauhin, masaya talaga eh. All right. Mula sa Department of Energy, representing the Secretary, si Miss Luningning Baltazar at si Norman Vincent Martirez. Si Binibining Luningning Baltazar ang Chief ng Power Market Development Division, samantalang si Norman ay isang Research Specialist. Hinihintay po natin yung taga-Napocor, pero narito si Zaldarriaga at si Fernandez ng MERALCO. At narito si Ginoong Roderick Padua at Reynaldo Cuevas mula po naman sa National Electrification Administration. So, hintayin na lang natin yung Napocor. Tuloy-tuloy na tayo sa ating talakayan. Ano po ang sitwasyon? We'll have time for your presentation sa Napocor. How is it today? May sapat ba tayong kuryente? At ito ba kailangan ng emergency powers upang malutas ang mga problema? Let's start with the presentation, please. Okay. Bear with us. This is a special program because we'll get down to the bottom of facts and figures. Okay? All right. Limitado po yung oras, so limitado rin yung presentation, but at least it will present to us a clear picture of what it is today. Pakigamit po ng isang mikropono rito.
Okay lang po ba dito na lang ako?
Yeah, sige po. Sige.
Good afternoon again. Good morning. Good morning, sorry. I'm Norman from the Department of Energy. So I will just briefly discuss the power situation and outlook and also the measures that the Department of Energy is doing. Next slide. So outline of my presentation will be the supply and demand situation for Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao and the measures to address the power supply issues. Next slide. Next slide. So, just to show the map of Luzon grid, no, you can see that the load center is in Metro Manila, which is the franchise area of MERALCO. Then, yung supply po natin nasa north and south. So, ang challenge dito is how to deliver efficiently yung power, no, from north and south to the center of franchise area of MERALCO. So most of our power plants in Luzon, coal, natural gas. No? Next slide. So just to show the actual demand and supply for Luzon grid for this year, January to July 21, 2014. Kung makikita nyo po yung blue na area, ayun po yung supply, no? So daily yan, araw-araw. Then yung red natin is, ito yung demand, no? Yung top electricity na consume for that day. And yung yellow perforated line, ayun po yung required reserve margin. So sa system natin, kailangan natin yan, no, to stable the grid and to provide frequency and reliability, no. So 4% yan ng peak demand, no. And then yung the following na perforated line is ito yung mga tinatawag na backup reserve, no. So kailangan to once na kasi may nag-down na power plant, yung unscheduled. So ito yung sasalo doon sa mga nagda-down na power plant, no. So kung makikita nyo, January to February and mga mid ng March, mataas po yung supply natin and yung demand naman mababa, no. So normally sa Luzon grid, summer months tumataas yung demand natin. So kung makikita nyo, ang peak demand nag-occur siya noong May at around 8,717 megawatts, no. 8,000 megawatts. Tapos yung makikita nyo yung etong black or yung dispatch, yung reserve na to sa yung gray, hindi na nami-meet pagdating ng ng summer months, no. So diyan may nagkakaroon tayo ng notices sa national grid, yung mga yellow alert, red alert notice. And kung makikita nyo itong event na to, yung red, during that date, doon nagkaroon ng red alert or manual load trapping sa system. No? Next slide. So, and yung sa outlook, no, bakit ba namin nasabi yung kailangan, no, for the Section 71 for the additional supply for the summer months of 2015. No? So again, yung blue area, siya yung existing capacity natin ngayon. Then yung top of that is the gray area. Ayun yung mga committed power projects or yung mga power plant na papasok sa mga period na yan, 2014, 2015 hanggang 2017. No? So kung makikita nyo yung summer months ng 2015, medyo thin yung reserve natin. No? And kung i-expand natin yung etong graph na to, sa next slide, kasi naka-monthly yan. So kung expand mo yung 2015 sa weekly outlook, makikita nyo yung summer months, wala siyang enough reserve for this April and May. No? Doon mataas yung demand and normally pag summer, mababa din yung hydro capacity natin. No? Kaya nababawasan din yung supply. And magkakaroon tayo ng Malampaya turnaround which is magkakaroon ng maintenance yung Malampaya gas field ng 1 month, no? March 15 to April 14. So mababawasan din yung supply natin for gas. And we projected a demand of around 9,017 megawatts. No? So next slide. So kung iti-table mo siya for the summer months of 2015 for Luzon, kung makikita niyo yung alert status, pag yellow alert, meaning nami-meet niya lang yung required reserve na 24% ng peak demand. Pero pag red alert, meaning yung required reserve na 4%, which is these numbers, ay hindi niya na nami-meet. No? So yung reserve natin almost around 151 na lang. No? So kaya nagkaroon ng red alert notice doon sa projections namin. No? And during that time, may mga instances na possible mag-manual load dropping or mag-brownout. And also, pag may nag-down na isa pang power plant na medyo malaki, so doon na talaga magkakaroon ng manual load dropping sa mga customers. Next slide. So, ano yung mga factors leading up to these projections? No? Kasi yung January, yung nag-represent sa Secretary, sinasabi niya lang, we have enough reserve for 2015. No? Pagdating nung March na projections, sabi niya, 10 na lang. And then this June, no, kailangan na ng additional capacity for 2015. No. Unang-una, for the committed power projects, yung Energy World, which is an LNG gas project sa Pagbilao, no, nag-commit sila that they can commission their power plant by December of this year, 2014, at 200 megawatts. No? And then also Abion, which is also a natural gas power plant, nag-commit din sila by September of this year at 100 megawatts na ma-online nila yung power plant. No? But on our March projections, na-delayed yung project. No? Sabi nila, they moved the commissioning by June of 2015. So hindi niya na mamimit yung summer of 2015. No? And also Abion, na-move siya ng September of 2015. And then, based on our sa updates na namin, almost uncertain na yung delivery. No? Sabi nila by September of 2015, dun pa lang dadating yung turbine or yung generator nila. No? And then yung Avion by October of 2015. So almost 300 megawatts yung nawala kung isipin natin. Kung dahil hindi nila mamimit yung target nila. No? And then Malaya Unit 1, which is NPC, IPPs. No? Malaya has two units, isang 300 megawatts and Unit 2 is 320 megawatts. No? Yung Unit 2 ngayon, its operation, no, tumatakbo to based sa notice ng NGCP for mass run unit. No? So yung Unit 1, based on our January projection, available siya at 300 megawatts. But by March of 2014, nag-decrease to by 200 megawatts. And sa update ngayon, naka-shutdown ngayon yung power plant because they need to rehab or to overhaul the unit. No?
Uh-huh. So, yun ang sitwasyon. Pero, Norman, yung bang sitwasyon sa Luzon, yun din ang sitwasyon sa Visayas and Mindanao?
Pupunta po tayo doon after
Sige,
this.
okay.
So, ayun po. No? So, kung i-consider natin na yung Malaya is, kung hindi siya tatakbo, at i-repair siya, ang target nila is June 2015. So, tapos na naman ng summer months bago siya pumasok. So, kung titignan nyo to, kung ito-total nyo, around 600 megawatts yung capacity na nawala. No? Na ina-expect natin sana na mag-add for capacity sa Luzon. Then, yung supply or yung demand natin, NGCP projected at around 8,500 megawatts peak for 2014 of summer months. No? But yung actual, 8,717 yung naging peak. So nag-shoot siya ng 100 megawatts. No? So kung i-consider mo yon, maaring by 2015, pwede nating i-add yung ganong projections, 100 megawatts. No? Next slide. So this is just a list of the committed projects. So itong mga committed projects, meaning they are on the advanced stages, mostly sa kanila meron ng financial closing and nagko-construct na. No? So ito lang yung mga list. Pwede ko naman pong i-provide to, hindi ko na siya isa-isahin. No? Around 2,800 megawatts. So ang timeline nito is 2014 to 2017. Ito yung mga committed projects. Diyan po yung kung anong type niya, yung location niya, sino yung proponent, and yung target commissioning nila. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. So ito naman yung mga indicative projects. So meaning, ito yung mga power projects na nasa different stages of development. So we have a total of 8,920 megawatts indicative power projects. So, ito yung mga proponent na they have an interest to put capacity in Luzon grid. So, next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. So, for Visayas grid naman, no, ang load center nila nasa Cebu, and Visayas grid is an island grid. Interconnected siya through submarine cable, no, yung Leyte, Samar, Cebu, Leyte, Bohol, then Cebu, Negros, and then Negros, Panay. No? So most of capacities niya are coal and geothermal. Next slide. So kung makikita nyo, no, again, like in Luzon, ito yung supply, then demand yung mga line. So kaya mababa yung supply niya, yung earlier part nung 2014 because of Typhoon Glenda nung November, no.
Yolanda.
Yolanda, sorry. Yolanda. No, so naapektuhan yung geothermal power plant nila and yung demand ng Leyte, Samar, so naapektuhan din siya and part of Cebu and Panay, no. So Leyte, before Yolanda, ang demand ng Leyte Samar is around 240 megawatts, no. But after nung Yolanda, ang demand nila goes down to around 70 to 80 megawatts. So kaya makikita nyo bumaba yung demand niya and then yung supply because of geothermal power plants na naapektuhan. Next slide. So for Visayas grid, makikita nyo nami-meet niya yung required reserve. So meaning may reserve siya but very thin. But right now, sa Visayas, nagkakaroon sila ng yellow alert pag nagme-maintenance yung malalaking power plant na coal. No? Yung sa Cebu, saka sa Panay. So, but because yung demand ng Visayas is hindi siya same katulad sa Luzon at around 8,000 megawatts. Ang demand ng Visayas are 1,500 to 1,600. So kung may kulang man siya ng reserve, Luzon can supply through the high voltage direct current, no, para ma-sustain yung or to put additional capacity para sa reserve sa Visayas grid. For Visayas grid, ang anticipated power projects na malaki yung 82 megawatts na coal-fired power plant sa Toledo and then yung Concepcion coal by 2016 sa Panay Island. So with that, magkakaroon silang additional capacity, base load capacity. Next slide. So this is just a list of the committed power projects in Visayas. So 587 megawatts. And dyan yung Sakasol, which is the solar grid-connected power plant, no? Nag-commission na yung phase 1 niya, 13 megawatts. So siya yung pinakamalaking solar na nakakonect sa grid. And then yung phase 2 niya is 8 megawatts additional. No? Around 20 megawatts ang capacity niya. Then, ito po yung iba pang mga power projects. Next slide. Next slide. So for indicative project, there's around 776 megawatts na may interest to put additional capacity in Visayas grid. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. So we go to Mindanao. So alam naman natin sa Mindanao, most of their capacity or dependent sila sa hydroelectric. No? Around 50% are source of their power from hydroelectric power plants. No? And ang isa pang issues dyan, yung supply nila is nasa north, but yung load nila or yung demand nasa south, which is the Davao area and Gensa. No? So again, a major challenge dyan is to deliver power from north to south. No? So doon pwedeng may mga losses. No? So in 2013, makikita nyo yung output po nila itong generation, 52% sa hydro, then followed by oil and coal. No? Then they have one geothermal power plant in Mount Apo. Next slide. So ito yung actual data nila or situation sa 2014. January, February, they have supply. So makikita nyo, nami-meet niya yung demand niya. But nung February, nung nagkaroon ng Mindanao blackout, which is nasira yung coal-fired power plant nila, no? Kaya makikita niyo biglang bumagsak yung supply, no? And yung pasok nun, May yung Unit 1, Unit 2, then June yung Unit 1. So ganun katagal yung period nung rotating brownout nila. No? So makikita nyo, hindi niya na-meet yung demand niya simula nung February 27 to June. No? But after that, yung nakabalik na yung coal-fired power plants, so na-meet niya yung demand niya, although mellow dropping, and expected yon kasi for Mindanao, not all utilities have enough contract for their supply. No? So makikita niyo sa mga private or ibang areas like Davao and Cagayan de Oro, hindi sila nagba-brownout because they have enough bilateral contracts. But yung ibang ECs na kulang yung kontrata nila, na kaka-experience sila ng manual load dropping or brownout sa area nila. Next slide. So sa outlook nila, makikita nyo, kulang talaga yung supply nila till pumasok yung project ng Aboitiz, which is 300 megawatts coal-fired power plant. So ang expected commissioning ng coal-fired power plant is by March of 2015. So with that, pag pumasok na yung Aboitiz, makikita niya, namimit niya na yung demand and supply niya. And also, pag pumasok na yung ibang power projects like San Miguel and the Alcantara Group, so puro coal-fired power plant po yun, which is needed by Mindanao because of baseload talaga yung problema ng Mindanao grid. Next slide. So this is just to show the list of committed projects, around 1,800 megawatts committed power projects for Mindanao grid. Next slide. Next slide. So, and also they have an indicative project of 1,700 megawatts. No? So, next slide. We go to the measures to address this power supply. Next slide. So, we have an interruptible load program. So, itong programa po na ito is a voluntary, no? Luzon, for participating DUs, MERALCO, they have participating customers at a load of 115 megawatts. Visayas, by Visayan Electric Company, 36 megawatts. And yung Mindanao, ito pong mga utilities na to at 53.9 megawatts. No? So paano po itong interruptible load program? No? Ito po yung programa ng mga utilities like MERALCO sa mga malalaking customers nila. No? For example, may customers sila na SM. No? May generator si SM. No? Sasabihan lang siya ni MERALCO kung anong capacity ang pwede niyang may offer or pwede ba siyang mag-load drop ng ganitong capacity. No? So, for example, may red alert or hindi enough yung supply sa Luzon. No? So sasabihin niya ngayon si customer na by ganitong oras, either patakbuhin mo yung generator mo or magbawas ka ng load ng this capacity and i-compensate ngayon yun ng MERALCO. No? So parang ako si SM, imbis na gamitin ko yung kontrata ko or yung supply sa akin ng MERALCO, papatakbuhin ko na lang yung generator ko, ibigay na lang ng MERALCO sa iba yung kuryente na para sa akin. No? So, ganun po yun. And ito pong programa na to is voluntary. No? Next slide. Pwede pang ma-explain or in details ni Sir Lawrence Mama yung interruptible load program ng MERALCO. Next slide is the interim Mindanao electricity market. No? Unlike Luzon and Visayas, wala pa pong electricity market sa Mindanao until we introduced this in February, in December of 2013. No? So, yung first na interim market sa Mindanao, so kung sa Luzon and Visayas is hourly, yung trading, yung unang launch ng interim market sa Mindanao is day ahead. No? So, kung ano yung kailangan mo tomorrow, ipoproject mo na ngayon, no? And isasubmit mo na sa market. So, ngayon po, naka-market intervention or hindi nag-ooperate yung electricity market sa Mindanao because of the event nga nung February 27, yung nag-blackout yung sa Mindanao area. No? So, itong programa na to, yung interim market, no, we introduced this because we want to excess capacity of other supplier to be used by other customer, no. Kasi sa Mindanao, pag nung walang market, it's very impossible for the some embedded generator or generator to contract or to supply with other utilities, no.
Okay.
So kung dadaanin nyo yung proseso na yun, napakatagal po, no, kasi dadaan pa yan sa ERC, kung paano yung magiging rates nyo. Kung kunyari, si Davao Light, may excess supply siya. Gusto niyang ibenta kay Samselco. So, through that, kailangan pa dumaan sa ERC para ma-approve yung kontrata nila. But with interim market, kung merong excess supply si Davao Light, pwede niyang ibato lang yun sa market and then pwedeng dun na lang bumili si Samselco sa market. No? Hindi na kailangan ng kontrata or approval by the ERC. So, habang naka-market intervention, no, so nag-add yung market ng another pictures, yung demand-side bidding, which is may options yung utilities kung kukuha ba sila sa market at their rate, no? Kasi dati, ang naging issue is, binibigyan sila ng market ng supply kahit ayaw nila. And hindi naman kasi nila monitor na nabibigyan na pala sila ng supply. No? But with this demand-side bidding, pwede silang mag-set ng presyo. Kunyari, pag kulang ako ng supply, bigyan mo ako ng supply pero at 9 pesos lang. Pag yung presyo as mataas sa 9 pesos, wag mo ako bibigyan ng supply. So may option silang ganun ngayon. No? And mag-start ulit once na ma-approve na yung price determination methodology. Kailangan kasi po muna ma-approve ng ERC yung PDM before mag-operate ulit yung interim market. Kasi dun sa naunang PDM, yung mga pictures po na ito ay hindi nakasama dun. So, kailangan mo nang ma-approve muna yan. Next slide. So, we have also modular genset program for Mindanao. No? Yung fund po nito ay galing sa Malampaya, 4.2 billion pesos. Ito yung program for kung sino yung mga cooperatives na wants to avail the modular genset program. No? So, ito yung mga list ng mga utilities or cooperatives na nag-avail and then yung status nila. No? So, etong options na to, they have options to purchase or to rent the modular genset. Pero etong utilities na to, puro purchase, no? And ang magandang nito, pictures for this modular genset program, for 2 years, kung ayaw na nilang gamitin yung generator, pwede nilang ibalik sa government, no? So for 2 years, ang babayaran lang nila yung interest. But if they want to keep the generator, after 2 years, doon na sila magbabayad nung cost ng generator and yung interest. No?
Okay.
Next slide. Yung section 71, so bakit na DOE nirecommend yung section 71? Because ang target natin is by summer months of 2015. No? So, kung dadaanin natin sa example procurement ng government, no, napakatagal po ng bidding. Yung malaya nga po pag in-overhaul siya, 9 months ang nakikita nilang overhauling. So hindi siya abot ng March, no. And with the IPIRA po, na alam naman natin na NPC or PSALM, hindi na sila pwedeng pumasok into a new contract or obligation. So, hindi na sila pwedeng magkaroon ng another PPA or mag-build ng bagong power plant. No? But with Section 71, no, wala pang emergency power na word. Ano. So, kung maano itong Section 71, maaaring i-propose or i-recommend na mangontrata uli si Pisan for additional capacity by 2015.
All right.
Okay.
So, I'd like to thank you, Norman, for a very candid presentation. We'll open the floor to questions from the media. I know you'd like to ask questions now, especially doon sa anggulo na meron nga bang pangangailangan for emergency powers. And in the first place, siguro, let me ask ang ating kasama, si Madam Luningning, mula sa Department of Energy. Hindi ba na-project yung maintenance ng mga power plants at kailangang magkaroon ng pagkakasabay-sabay? Yes, please.
Hello.
Norman, sige.
For the maintenance of power plant, no, meron po tayong tinatawag na Grid Operating and Maintenance Program. No. Ang nag-approve po nito or nag-schedule nito is National Grid Corporation of the Philippines. No. So nilalatag po nila yan. No. Meron silang 3 years GOMP. No. So for this year, meron silang 2015 to 2017. Ang problema po kasi yung forced outage or unscheduled na shutdown ng power plants. Ayun po yung hindi natin na
project, of course. I remember when I was young, bata pa rin si Pat noon, pinasok ng DIKIA yung suwal.
Ayun po.
Yun. So yung pag may DIKIA na naman pala, delikado tayo. Ganun nga po ba yun?
So like po yung nangyari nung nakaraan din, yung normally pag mga coal-fired power plant, ang issue nila lagi yung boiler tube nila, no? Ayun yung madalas masira. No?
Okay. Coming from the DOE and speaking for the Secretary, Ms. Luningning Baltazar, do you think that your program doon sa paggamit ng generators ng malalaking mga kumpanya tulad ng SM will alleviate? Because, kahit anong sabihin natin, pinakamagandang pasyalan pag summer yung mga malalaking malls na binibili ng tao buko lang o di kaya ice drop, makapagpalamig lang. So, do you think it's a viable option really?
In the short term, it can help. Kasi we have around 3,000 megawatts of the yung may self-generating capacity or may embedded generations. So, makakatulong din siya for the immediate term na kasi may gestation period ang pagtatayo ng planta. So, it will take time. Kanina nakita niyo yung presentation ni Norman, may mga problems din silang na-encounter. So, medyo nade-delay ng konti minsan kahit na sabi mong naka-pipeline na siya by this year. Pero may mga untoward incidences na mga issues na kailangan nilang i-address along the way ng construction.
Yeah. You're just with the Department of Energy for some years. But for us, consumers like Mentong Laurel, parang this is just a case of deja vu. This was the case in 1992 when Tita Cory left Malacanang at sabi nung ilan nagkagatas-gatas na. Huwag nyo nang tanongin kung ano yung sa Kastila, pero ganun na nangyari. Now we had to resort to, yung mga independent power producers na kahit mag-enercon ka, you have to pay for the agreed and contracted capacity, right?
Siguro po ang explanation dyan is, iba yung situation noon at saka ngayon. Before the time of, prior to 1990 siguro, no, we don't have the market environment na tinatawag natin. So, wala tayo noon ng WESM at noon limited ang participation ng private sector. So, talagang puro government intervention, puro initiatives ng government po. So, ang nangyayari, government has to infuse the funds. Yun po yung kasama doon sa ating mga nagiging part ng utang ng bayan. So, ang government po ang magpuput up ng power plant or makikipag-contract siya sa mga tinatawag niyong independent power producers. Given po na hindi na kaya ng government na i-sustain yung demand. So, lumalaki yung demand natin ang projection din po is before mataas yung demand dahil maganda yung economy natin during the 1990s hanggang during the time of President Ramos, I think. So yun yung time na talagang napakarami nitong IPP contracts na pinasok ng government.
Pero hindi naman sa ika nga pag bubukas ng mga sugat na naghilom na. Kung inasikaso ito before 1992, hindi siguro tayo nagkaproblema noong panahon ni Tito Eddie.
Mukhang history na po yan.
Kaya nga, pero we have to learn from history. Without historical
siguro
data.
yung ang context ng proper planning.
Ayun. Yun ang problema. We have Mentong Laurel. Pakilapit lang sa mikropono, Mentong, please.
High school before the market milieu, as you said, entered the picture. High school ka na ba nun?
Elementary
Meaning
siguro.
Before 1986, high school ka na ba?
Hindi pa po.
Hindi pa. Kaya napakahirap magpaliwanag ng buong storya. At ang taktika po, estratehiya ng mga nagaharing uri na may hawak ng kuryente ay limitahin ang salaysay doon sa technical sa ngayon. At hindi ibabalik doon sa ugat ng mga problema. Kaya tatanungin ko, at unfortunately, we don't have the person who should answer this, Manny Pangilinan, in front of us. Bakit ang Meralco namuhunan ng 8 billion pesos, kapartner ang Salim Group for another 10 billion na kinita din sa atin sa Meralco, at nagbukas na yung planta sa Singapore itong mga nakaraang buwan. At ang Meralco na kumita ng 100 billion na po, hindi namuhunan dito. Take aside all the legal issues para hindi tayo magkaroon ng shortage. Kawalangian lang po ito, mga kabansa. There is no answer to be obtained from these young people, whom I respect and they're very competent. I don't know if some of the executives are part of the scam on the Filipino people. And pasensya, nanginginig ako dahil sa galit ko dito sa mga walang hiyak. Ito.
I can understand, Mentong.
Okay.
Thank you for the input.
Because I can tell you everything about what's wrong and why it led to this. And they will not solve the problem. Petilla will not solve the problem because he will not be allowed to by the powers that be until tayo ay magrevolusyon.
Okay. Thank you, Mentong. Maganda yung punto mo na nabanggit. Siguro walang makakasagot dito tungkol kay Manny Pangilinan. Ano? All right. Easy. All right.
If I see him here,
I'm
going to clobber him.
Okay.
Makulong na ako kung makulong. Pero mga walang hiyang yan, pinahihirapan ng bayan. For the Salim Group and the American investors, they are traitors.
All right. Thank you, Mentong. From the National Electrification Administration, let me ask you, yung bang electric cooperatives is still a viable option considering that we get to see yung Marawi case, yung Aleco at iba pa? Please.
By our figures, of the 119 electric cooperatives in the country, around 78 are viable any which way you look at it, financial or technical considerations. But if you want to see through the parameters, if it's system loss, yes, they're very viable. They have around 5 to 8%, and ERC cap is 13%. So they're very much below the system loss cap. If it's collection efficiency, they're doing well, much more than some banks are. They are at 99%. But the problem is, of course, there are some bad eggs in the basket, and these co-ops that are not doing well are the ones being magnified in the public. We have a handful of them actually, but of the percentages in the 119, they're just a small bunch.
Yeah, but the problem is, this may be contagious, While we get to recognize yung mga model na electric cooperatives, can you cite to us why electric cooperatives fail doon sa mga lugar na nabanggit ko?
Culture has some part on it. We have to admit governance also and politics sometimes takes its toll on the mechanisms that we have set up precisely to minimize political interventions. But here in the Philippines, it's part of life. Putulan mo ng kuryente, if they cannot pay, we we should stop distributing electricity. But sometimes, humanitarian reasons, we have to bring it back.
Yeah. Pero I heard may mga electric cooperatives na nagkakaproblema dahil mismong opisina ng gobyerno hindi nakakapagbayad ng electric bills.
Yes. In the books of the electric co-ops, we have some unpaid accounts. Some are considered dead accounts already. And sad to say, these are local government units or some military camps. But we do offset as an intervening measure. We do offset those unpaid bills with some arrangements we have with them. So nakukuha din.
So you believe that Secretary Mar Rojas has a lot of homework to do because local government units at police camps.
Again, it's isolated cases. Just some.
Okay. What about the impact of natural disasters? Will it not affect the viability of these electric cooperatives? I'd like to mention Albay na hinagupit ni Glenda.
Well, in any which case, even if it's a private or a government entity, once you are hit by a disaster, it will affect your finances for sure. But with the electric co-ops, all the more. The rate methodology of the electric co-ops is they are not rate on return based. They are not there for profit. So when you are hit by a typhoon, you have to dig in your finances to bring it back. And that's where our company, the National Electrification Administration, comes in. The subsidy given by the government is coursed through us to give to these electric co-ops in the form of grants, of subsidies. So that we could build back better those facilities hit by typhoons or earthquakes.
How has politics affected the viability of these electric cooperatives? Because some politicians own the telephone companies, pagkatapos magkakapapel pa sa electric cooperatives. So, buenas ang dating. Dahil lang sa may poste ka na, may dadaanan ka pa ng kable mo ng telepono, kung ikaw pa may-ari ng cable, libre ka pa. Paano yan?
Well, maybe it's just accidental on some entrepreneurs' part that they are the owners also of some utilities like telephones, etc. But rest assured, the mechanisms are there. We are not being held hostage by any particular group, even if you're a prominent family from a province. The mechanisms are there. The election rules are there. If you want to be a board member of an electric co-op, which basically runs the electric co-op, you have to go by the rules.
Okay. Whatever happened to government programs to get investors into geothermal and other non-conventional or renewable sources of energy? Madam Luningning.
We have the current renewable energy law, which provides the incentives para dito sa mga renewable energies.
But why is it that sa presentation ni Norman mas marami yung coal kaysa dun sa renewable energy?
I think, sir, it will depend on the viability of the project, at saka yung availability din ng resource. Mukhang we have to check yung resources natin, yung potential, kung meron pa for the geothermal. But baka yung iba exhausted na yung mga potential sites.
Whatever happened to plans to introduce the wind power? Sabi nila, nasa Congress na lang daw yung hangin ngayon. Di ba tayo magtatayo ng planta ron? Yung nasa Banggi, nasundan pa ba yun? Yes, Norman.
Meron pong around 100 plus committed projects na wind power plant, yung sa Kaparispisan. And
Pakilapit lang po ng mikropono.
sa Kaparispisan po, meron pong another around 87 megawatts wind power projects. And meron din dito sa bandang Tanay. Ay, saan yung Malaya? Rizal, no? Pililya. Meron din ng power projects, no? And ang lang kasi kaya na-highlight yung mga coal-fired power plant is because of their capacity. Mas malalaki sila compared dun sa mga renewable capacity.
Okay, thank you. What about Meralco? What have you noticed sa Meralco? Meron bang increase in demand? Do you have the supply to address the demands of your coverage? Yes, please.
Among our Meralco customers, yung projected growth in demand in the Meralco area is about 4% per year. And of the Meralco market right now, nadi-divide na actually into two. There's a portion of the market that we call the non-contestable market that is still served by the distribution utility. And now there's a new portion of the market, there's a new segment that we call the contestable market that have been allowed to choose their own suppliers. So far, around 300 companies in the Meralco area have taken this route. They constitute about 1,000 megawatts of demand. So about 1,000 megawatts of demand in the Meralco area are now responsible for their own consumption, and they find their own supply. Now, the remaining demand that we call the non-contestable market is still supplied by the distribution utility, and we continue to look for supply for these customers. Just recently, we entered into what we call interim power supply agreements with several generators, such as the Bawang Power Plant in La Union, the Lemay Power Plant in Bataan, and we even went as far as the Visayas, the Toledo Power Plant in Cebu, and the Panay Power Plant in Iloilo, which is now partly supplying Meralco's load. So as load continues to grow within the Meralco area, we continue to look for additional supply for these customers.
Okay, how big is the franchise area of Meralco?
In terms of land area, the franchise area of Meralco is 9,337 square kilometers. But in terms of kilowatt-hour consumption, the consumption in the service area accounts for about 55% of the Philippine consumption.
At dito sa mga lugar na ito, can you give us an average profile of your consumers?
In the Meralco area, we have a mix of residential, commercial, and industrial customers. The residential segment, they number about 5.3 million individual customers or households, and they consume about 30% of all kilowatt hours sold in the service area. Now, the remaining commercial and industrial establishments consume about 70% of the kilowatt hours in the area, but number only around 200,000 customers. So we have a mix of millions of household customers that consume 30% of the power, and a few 100,000 that consume 70% of the power.
What is the average growth rate for the Meralco franchise area?
So far, it follows the population growth and the growth of the economy as measured by the gross domestic product. In the past, it has ranged from between 2 to 4% per annum. In the next few years, we project it to grow around 4% per annum.
And would you say that the trend will go on?
A large part of the growth depends on the projected economic growth of the Philippines. So far, the various observers have said that the GDP growth in the next few years will range from 6 to 7% per annum, and we're considering that also in our forecasts.
I see. Pero dun sa systems loss ng Meralco, how would it compare with the systems losses by electric cooperatives?
Tulad na nabanggit kanina, yung system loss ng mga distribution utilities ay masusing minamanmanan ng Energy Regulatory Commission. Sa kasalukuyan, may mga standards po silang ipinatutupad, may mga ceiling na dapat pong sundin ng mga utilities. Para sa mga investor-owned distribution utilities, ang ceiling po ay nasa 8.5%. Sa kaso po ng Meralco, ang aming kasalukuyang system loss ay around 6.8%. So it is below the ceiling.
Really? Sa NEA, ano po yung average systems loss ng mga cooperatives?
Ang ceiling is different for the electric cooperatives. It's 13%. We're hovering around 11%.
If we had to quantify this in peso terms, how much would it be?
1% system loss that we save is around 800 million pesos. So we could take it from there. It's on the savings actually that we compute.
Okay, what about sa Meralco, Joe?
It's 1 billion per savings per percentage that is shaved off. So kung 8.5% yung ceiling and we're below 7%, so that's approximately 1.5 billion in savings.
Maganda ito. Maganda ito napapag-usapang ito. Pero sa Department of Energy, how would we compare yung ginagastos ng pamahalaan para sa enerhiya? How would it compare with other ASEAN countries? Ilang percent ng GDP ang ginagastos para sa development ng electricity in the Philippines?
Wala po tayong exact statistics, but so far, kung sa present structure ng market o ng industry, ang gobyerno halos wala na siyang ini-infuse na investment para makapag-put up ng mga energy facilities or power facilities.
Would you say that the privatization of this generators, transmission, and distribution helped the government save?
It helped the government save in terms of hindi na nadadagdagan yung kanyang utang, exposure sa yung utang niya sa mga international lending companies, international lending corporation. But yun po.
Pero ang punto po, kung nakatipid ang gobyerno, hindi naman kaya nagpasa ng krus ang consumers dahilan sa privatization. Dahilan sa kung pribado na nagpapatakbo nito, they can demand because they invested instead of the government. Ano po kaya?
Well, we cannot conclude on that, but we still have to conduct an assessment. But ang isa nga pong concern is that yun ang naririnig natin sa taong bayan na napapasa sa kanila lahat.
Yun nga po ang sitwasyon. May tanong po rito. Yung revenue shares ng consumers as against commercial and industrial users, ano po ang pagkakaiba nito? Gaano kalaki yung sinasabing revenue share ng ordinaryong tahanan doon sa mga malalaking kumpanya?
Sa ngayon, wala lang akong eksaktong datos kung paano ho yung hatian in terms of revenues. Pero hindi siguro nalalayo doon dahil tulad ngayon, ang generation charge ay pareho naman regardless of what kind of customer they are. So a large mall has the same generation charge as a household customer.
Okay. Yes, Mentong.
Data now, but from my recollection, and Kuryente is the one focused on this in our group, sa consumer protection. I think 60% of the revenues of MERALCO come from consumers.
From ordinary consumers like us. Okay. Okay. That's another case. Pero we will see. Sabi nga, di ba? Sa ano po, sa NEA, mga electric cooperatives, do you have a special package para sa mga gustong magnegosyo? Dahilan sa problema nun sa Bicol, may NPA ka na raw, may bulkan ka pa, may bagyo ka pa, mataas pa yung rates ng electric cooperatives. Ano po ba?
By the way, sir, ang electric cooperative, by the way, is revenue neutral, meaning non-profit, no? Non-stock and non-profit. Our rate is, of course, regulated by the Energy Regulatory Commission. And electric cooperatives are classified into different groups. Meaning, 119, on-grid electric cooperatives is under the rules of RCEC-WR rate methodology, which is different from the off-grid or the island electric cooperatives.
Of course.
And we have 7 groups there, Group A up to Group G. And the rate there is the DSM rate, or the average distribution supply metering charges per group is varies from every group. Kaya in Bicol, let's say Casureco or Albay, it is the group maybe like Albay, it is Group G, if I'm not mistaken. And the smaller one is is under Group A. Something like that. And they have different rates. For
Yeah,
that
there
matter.
was a time, First Catanduanes Electric Cooperative or FISELCO was called the FISELCO dahil mahirap daw ang sitwasyon.
FISELCO is an island electric cooperative. Okay. The rate is under the UFR rate methodology, which is different from the on-grid.
Who decides on the rates?
The Energy Regulatory Commission.
Energy Regulatory Commission.
Commission, yes, sir.
Okay, we should have invited ERCs here, but we will have them one time siguro in the near future. But would you say that these rates that you have, na iba't ibang classification, would encourage people to do business in the provinces?
I think so because we take the case of some electric cooperatives in Pampanga. I think you've heard of Pelco 2, wherein they have this Guagua, a very large commercial area.
Yes.
And we have the Apalit under a certain cooperative in the name of Pelco 3. The other one is Pelco 2. The rate of the average rate for Pelco 2 is the 1 peso something. And for a pallet, it's only 0.699. Let's say 70 centavos against 1 peso. If you have, if you are planning to put up a business, would you of the same business, and you want to look for a place wherein the rate is lower, cheaper, I think you will be comparing the one in Guagua and the one in the Palit. I think I better establish my business in somewhere in a Palit, because the rate is lower than that of Guagua.
Okay. Maganda ito napapag-usapang ito eh. So, sa Department of Energy, meron ba kayong objective assessment of the energy program? Because, isang bagay po kasi ngayon, yung sa transmission, yung Transco, hawak ng mga Chino without sounding racist. Now that you have something na hindi nagkakaunawaan sina Tito Pinoy at sina Xi Jinping sa South China Sea, na-i-issue yung security of the country. Pero anong pananaw ninyo ron?
Yung with respect to transmission, we have the concession agreement being monitored. The concession agreement is monitored by the National Transmission Corporation together with PISAM. So they provide regular reports on the compliance of the NGCP.
And how
with
long
respect
will
to the
this
provision.
agreement last?
25 years extended. As
Kailan
per
po
their franchise, it's extendable to 50
Kailan po
years.
nagsimula ito?
2009, I think.
2009. So matagal-tagal pa ito. All right. Questions from the media? Yes, please. Sige. Please identify yourself.
Yes, good morning, gentlemen.
And lady.
And lady,
Okay.
yes. I came when the presentation is with regards to uninterruptible supply of power. Congratulations, sir, Norman. Kasi nag-aalala talaga kami, baka mawalan eh.
Baka sumabit.
At least may program tayo. One time na-interview kasi si Secretary Petilla. He mentioned about using malampaya funds. Can you update us from DOA? Or some
Malampaya
concept?
funds.
Yeah.
Funds.
Yes.
Okay. Meron na. Nabanggit na kanina. Binili ng generators, right? Oh, yes, please.
Malaki to eh, di ba? You talk about 200 billions.
Yung sa Malampaya Fund po ngayon na pinrovide ng government is for the modular genset for Mindanao. So na-approve po yon, it's 4.2 billion pesos no, for the Mindanao area only. Yes.
Okay, Mindanao.
For other projects, still need to be approved by the Office of the President.
Then talking of the benchmark, paano tayo magiging competitive? For example, other Asian countries, in terms of solar power, they're producing thousands of megawatts. How much megawatts we produce from solar power?
As of now po, yung nag-ooperate, we have 1 megawatt sa Mindanao, and then sa Negros is 13 megawatts, then madadagdagan to ng another 8 megawatts. No? And for solar projects is dependent din po dun sa area. No? Mostly sa Mindanao yung maraming solar power projects.
I understand one of the problem is the cost. Is there any initiative, halimbawa, it will be tax-free, BOI incentive? Ginagawa ba itong effort na ito?
Marami pong incentives for the renewable energy nung napasa po yung RE Act. No? And isa po dito yung bukod dun sa mga incentives nila sa mga tax, yung yung feed-in tariff rates, no, which is all REs by categories, they can receive that approved rates sa customer na mabibigyan.
Yeah, you talk about targeting, about the benchmark, the price, for us to be competitive as a country. Kasi pinakamahal na yun sa atin sa Asian. Magkano dapat?
Magandang issue yan. Will you be in a position to answer that? Maganda. Yes, let's hear from Meralco. Sige.
Yung tungkol sa presyo ng kuryente, na meron din kaming pinagawang study mula sa isang Australian consultant para ikumpara ang presyo ng kuryente dito sa Pilipinas against other Asian neighbors tulad ng Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand at Singapore. So ang unang tanong na pinalinaw po sa consultant ay totoo bang mataas ang presyo ng kuryente dito sa Pilipinas kumpara sa ating mga neighbors? ang lumabas po, kalapit ang presyo natin sa Singapore at tayong dalawa na Singapore ay mas mataas kumpara sa neighboring countries ng Taiwan, South Korea, Indonesia, Malaysia at Thailand. So totoo, mas mataas ang presyo ng kuryente dito. Tapos ang pangalawang tanong na pinalinaw po sa kanila ay bakit ganun kalaki yung diferensya ng presyo ng kuryente. At lumabas po sa pag-aaral nila, malaki po ng presyo ng kuryente sa ibang bansa tulad ng Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand ay sinasubsidize ng gobyerno. Sa countries like Thailand, like Malaysia and Indonesia, up to 50% of their power is subsidized by the government. While in countries like Singapore and the Philippines, they don't receive government subsidies. In the case of the Philippines, power is actually taxed. For example, the Malampaya Fund, many people may not be familiar with it. The fund comes from taxes that are tapped into the rates of consumers. So all of the generation of the natural gas facilities in
Batangas, part of the fuel cost is actually royalty taxes that go to the government in the form of the Malampaya Fund.
Yeah, if we will account all of those funds, since na maupo si Presidente Aquino, magkano na ho yung nakolekta natin from DOA, please?
Yung collection po siguro ng funds, hindi namin masasagot.
Hindi nila saklaw.
Baka sa, ano po, BIR po.
Titingnan natin yun. Sige. Okay. Thank you very much. We have questions from the floor. Mentong. Sige.
2 points, 2 questions. One, I'm going to ask the NEA personalities here.
Yeah, si Roderick at si Ray.
Since they're familiar with the rates of their members, no, co-op members, what is the lowest rate that any of your co-ops charges? I can recall one that is pretty low, Iligan Light, but I don't know if you know some other lower rates. Let's compare that to Meralco rates, which has a 5.3 million market base. Samantalang some of the co-ops have only 100,000 base, 60,000 base market. Compare and see what insight you can get from that. No?
Okay.
First of all, Iligan Light is not an electric co-op. It's a private entity. We were invited once to the Office of the President on the context of perceived high electricity rates for electric co-ops. And we did present on PowerPoint a comparative electricity without cost of money considerations dahil mas mura sa probinsya. No? Tarlac Electric against our Tarelco, mas mababa sa Tarelco. By I think 80 centavos. If it's around 8 point something, yes, pesos per kilo. Yes, including DSM. But at that time, there was still no methodology for DSM at that time. And then, going to San Fernando, Pampangas, Pelapco against our Pelco 2, it's lower at Pelco 2. Batelec 2 against Meralco, we're a bit lower, Batelec 2. Going to Cebu, Peco against Sebeco 2, Sebeco 1, it's lower. And then in Iloilo against, Veco Visayan Electric Company against Cebu Electric Co-op, lower ang Cebu. Maliit yung sa private utilities in the provinces. Of course, the giant is Meralco in Metro Manila.
How come some of the smaller co-ops and private operators with infinitely smaller consumer bases are lower than Meralco, which dominates 55% economies of scale? It doesn't make sense anymore.
I think you have to ask ERC on that. We're concerned only about...
Si Chairman Dukot ang dapat nating kumbidahin. No? Siya pa rin nakaupo eh. We will have a special session for that. Yung DAP, sa kuryente muna tayo. You know? Sabi nga, slow by slow. Hindi pwedeng package deal. Yes, please.
Medyo nahuli po tayo. Joey Dizon sa Radyo Aguila. No? Tatanong ko lang sa Department of Energy, baka natalakay na to kanina. Meron mga assurance ngayon ng Department of Energy na in the next 2 years after Pinoy, o di kaya bago kung bababa ang Pangulo ng 2016, meron tayong sapat na supply?
Kung makikita niyo po yung slide po kanina yung pinakita ko sa Luzon.
Hindi ko nga nakita.
Ay,
Tatanong ko.
Na-traffic ka kasi.
Traffic.
No, so for Luzon grid, we have enough supply kasi pagdating na lalo na ng 2016, doon na po papasok yung malaking power projects, no. Kasi yung sinasabi namin na summer period ng March of 2015, medyo po kasi na-delayed yung mga power projects na inaasahan sana natin, no. So papasok sila around last quarter of 2015 and to 2017. And for Visayas Grid, ganun din po, no? Yung mga power projects nila, may magko-commission ngayong taon, and then by 2016, another 270 megawatts, no? And for Mindanao, marami pong baseload power projects ang papasok simula ng March of 2015.
So wala tayong problema dahil ang mga project ay nandyan, natatakbo na. So
Okay.
ano bang ihirit natin na emergency power na kailangan ni Presidente?
For that emergency power, nakikita kasi namin by summer period of 2015.
di may problema.
By 2015 po, no, yung summer period. Normally kasi sa Luzon, summer period yung March to May, ayun lagi yung critical yung supply natin, no. So, ang ano naman ni Secretary is it's just a proposal para kasi mapabilis yung procurement ng additional power and for NPC and PISA.
Only for summer
Ng 2015.
so only for summer yung 27 billion ba yung proposal
hindi naman
gagastusin ng
Hindi naman po ganun.
Department of
Hindi
Energy?
naman po.
Ano, procurement o
Leasing lang
ARKILA?
po. Lease lang po. Rental. Sa rental.
So magre-rental tayo ng... So
Okay.
during summer, ayun, pagpunta tayo ron eh. Kasi issue ito sir eh, di ba?
For that, kung matuloy man tong rental na to, it's gonna be meron pong bidding process, no?
Okay, may bidding ito, kaya hindi natin alam kung sino magpaparticipate.
Transparent po tayo pag
Okay. Sige, thank you very much. Pero let me ask you, dun sa data kasi ng Joint Foreign Chambers of Commerce, tama yung sabi na yung Pilipinas at Singapore, halos magkapareho yung industrial electricity tariffs sa selected Asian economies. Pero yung residential, mataas pa rin tayo sa Japan. What makes us na mas mataas sa Japan? From the MERALCO side, please.
Tulad na nabanggit, I think that the Joint Foreign Chambers data that you have came from a report made by a group called the International Energy Consultants.
Yes.
Yan. So actually, we hired the International Energy Consultants to give us a more detailed report on the comparison. Kasi when we asked him for additional details tungkol sa ginawa niya for the Joint Foreign Chambers, it turned out that the data there was from different months. So there were some data there from as far back as October 2009, and it was compared with data from March 2010. So when coal and fuel prices started to go up, so we asked him to do apples to apples comparison of prices across countries. So he did one for a snapshot for January 2012, and that's the data that we got from him, that the rates in Japan, the Philippines, and Singapore, which are all what we call market-based or cost-reflective tariffs, are higher than the countries like Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia. And in some, the large part of the difference is really due to subsidies in those countries, while in the Philippines, power price is heavily taxed.
Okay.
So not just the royalties, for example, in the fuel, but the value-added tax, the local franchise tax, and the different taxes that go into the cost of providing service.
Okay.
Yeah, since wala pang ibang nagtatanong.
May magtatanong dyan mamaya. Sige.
Nahihiya din akong sobrang madalas, pero maraming tanong talaga. This international energy consultants, I've also used their data to show that we are the highest. And of course, the subsidies are there. There are 2 points about subsidies that we should ask. What's wrong with subsidies? All the countries that subsidize have lower unemployment than the country higher real growth rates than the country. Number two, we have no subsidy. We are subsidizing the profits of private corporations from generation, distribution, transmission. Tayong kumikita sila sa atin, that is our subsidy to them. Tanggalin lang yung kita, papantay tayo doon sa mga subsidized nga.
Okay. Thank you for the observation. Doon tayo sa Bagyo. Anong impact sa electric cooperatives ng mga nakalipas na bagyo? Yung Yolanda, mag-anibersaryo na. Ilang electric cooperatives na nalugso? Yan.
Basically, we have the whole of Region 8 and parts of Region 6, also parts of Cebu na tinamaan nung Yolanda. And it financially, it really devastated them. Even if the government gave them subsidies, katatayo pa lang ng mga, o kaya electrify pa lang ng mga sitios na yon, dumaan yung Yolanda, sira ulit. And we have to go back again to the rate methodology of the electric co-ops which are non-profit. Walang kukuhanan just from the government. So pag bumagyong ganon, the ERC does not allow any buffer for them to recover yung mga capital expenditure projects na yon.
Kasama ba sa presentation ninyo yung tungkol sa pinsala ng bagyo?
No, because the topic is the looming power crisis and also possible sources
How
of
does
energy.
NEA look at the power crisis? Is there such a power crisis according to NEA? Sige, let's have a few minutes for the presentation. And then, by the way, si Sky Ortigas, yung kasama ko, pakikuha lang ng mga email addresses nila because we will be sending you by email the presentations for your information, okay? Pakipatay lang ng ilaw dito sa side na to para magamit yung, makita ang mabuti.
Okay. So as DOE had presented earlier about the demand supply, we'd like to start off by saying the energy sector is composed of three distinct parts: generation, transmission, and distribution. The National Electrification Administration, representing the 119 co-ops nationwide, is with the distribution sector. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we are not going into generation. Nothing prevents the electric co-ops into getting into generation facilities. But on the topic of what are the NEA initiatives or interventions when there seems to be a looming power crisis, we have two NEA initiatives on that regard. First is to encourage the ECs to integrate renewable energy or to embed that generation of renewable energy in their portfolio supply mix. Why? Because of at least two considerations why it's an all-out strategy for the National Electrification Administration to go into renewable energy. One is that according to our data, 22% of the total peak demand of the electric cooperatives are without contracts. So meaning, no assured power supply yet from the generators. So NEA has got to do something with it. Okay, we have to have an intervention. The 22% is this part. So you could see here we have the number of ECs, 99, which excludes the island co-ops. No? And those are around 20, so that makes it 119. And the contracted level for 2015 is around 2,724 megawatts, of which 752 has no contracts yet. So what we foresee is that around 22%, or that 752 megawatts, we have to do something about it. Next slide. The second consideration on why we should go into renewable energy is NEA's mandate is to energize all the remaining 32,441 sitios, which we started in 2011, to energize it before the end of the President's term, which is basically 2015. Currently, the level is around 51%. Now, we are reaching into the last mile areas. This is system loss for those electric cooperatives because of overextended secondary lines. These are the too far-flung areas already. There is a limitation on the science of using electricity wires, technical and also non-technical in terms of pilferage. So the initiative of NEA is, instead of overextending these lines from the usual grid, if there is a waterfall or a biomass site somewhere there, closer to the targeted sitio, then use that option, which is a shorter route. But we'll go there. I'll explain briefly how it will look. Next slide. So for the 119 ECs, the total sitios in the country is around 100,000 plus. So right now we're at 85%, but then again, our target to energize in the last 5 years is 32,441. Next slide. So we could see here, we're basically around 51% of our target, and we are getting into those really remote areas of the country. Next slide. So, our usual grid connection is like this. If this is the electric distribution grid line, this is the last electric pole. We have energized in the last 3 years, for example, this Sitio A and Sitio B. Sitio is a smaller enclave than a barangay, maybe around 20 sitios composed of a barangay. These lines of the electric co-ops, using government funds, is making them suffer because of system losses. Now, if we are targeting in 2015 this Sitio C, it would be like overextending already this whole line. Overextending. This is system loss. But if we can have a waterfall or a biomass somewhere here, then this would be the shorter route. Okay? This would be the shorter intervention or less capex for NEA, for the government, for the electric co-op. And eventually, the facility could embed that power going back to the grid or sell. Not actually sell because it's being owned by the same electric cooperative, but the EC can use that excess power. The second intervention of NEA, sorry, we have to go back. So how many projects are we talking about? According to our Office for Renewable Energy Development, we have 377 megawatts of indicative hydropower. Again, this is distinct from the DOE presentation because they are on a more macro scale. Ours is on the electric cooperatives franchise area only. We have on top 121 megawatts composing of 15 projects for solar, 101 megawatts for biomass, and 16 megawatts for wind. So the slide I presented earlier basically explains how we do it, and this is the rundown of the indicative projects. The second intervention is what DOE mentioned a while back about the Mindanao Modular Genset Program. So the program is intended to provide an immediate relief or an alternative measure to supply the needed power while the power generation facilities are still ongoing. So this is sort of a band-aid solution for the power situation in Mindanao. This is a DOE initiative coursed through the National Electrification Administration and being implemented by the electric co-ops. And so far, we have around 66 megawatts being implemented by these co-ops. So 66 megawatts of availment of the modular gensets. So those two projects combined will more or less address the needed capacity of the electric co-ops. Again, we are in the distribution sector. Secondary mandate is generation, but we are into it just to aid DOE and the private sector deal with the perceived looming crisis.
Thank you very much. And that's from the NEA. Pero dun sa mga kasama natin sa media na problemado dahil hindi kagad na-restore yung electric power nung Glenda, we'll have Joe Zaldarriaga to update us on what happened. Will you also be discussing in peso terms yung damage sa inyo nung bagyo? Pwede? Well, di ba? Okay. Whatever you have, sige. Joe Zaldarriaga of MERALCO. Kanina po, nakasama natin ang ating panauhin mula sa NEA.
So, overcoming the typhoon crisis called Glenda. So basically, makikita nyo dun sa red lines yung damage sa aming mga facilities, mostly from the south. Kasi nung tumahak ho si Glenda, ang trajectory o yung track ho nung bagyo ay nanggaling ho dito sa southern portion. So most of the facilities that have been really severely and badly hit nito pong nagdaang bagyo ay dun ho sa southern portion namin. So yung trippings ho dun sa transmission backbone, initially na-isolate ho yung southern generation maging yung transmission part. So we had to rely on our north plants of the suppliers dahil wala hong maibigay nga po initially itong southern plants na naapektuhan ho ng bagyo, both the plants itself, yung mga generating facilities, at maging itong transmission facility ng NGCP. And then just an overview. Next slide. And sa circuit level, so by day 5, nag-umpisa ho kasi kami on 16th of July na approximately 12.8% lang po ng customers namin ang meron hong kuryente. Slowly, we brought it up to 64.67 of our circuits that we were able to energize until pagdating ho nung day 5 na kung saan halos 95% na po ng circuit levels namin na naka-up. And by day 9, 100% of our affected circuits have been energized, and then that's the time we started what we term our mapping up operations dun sa mga isolated customers and areas. Well, ang naging impediments lang ho namin basically were the volume of the clearing works, yung heavy rains, matapos ho dumaan si Glenda, ay dumaan ho si Henry. Pasensya na ho, medyo putol lang yung presentation sa screen. And then problems in hard-hit areas, yung mga lugar kinailangan ho namin magbangka para ho mapuntahan yung iba pang mga areas, particularly sa Quezon, wherein we needed to conduct restoration efforts. And we work non-stop, day and night, 2-hour shifts, 16 hours dire-diretso po, dun sa mga communities that we needed to service. Makikita ho ninyo some of our heavily damaged facilities that have been toppled. And the challenging conditions as well. And right after po yung 100 restoration within the MERALCO franchise area, we also extended the efforts to help the communities that have been affected, the worst hit areas dito po sa Albay, Bicol. We sent a contingent of 61 personnel and 16 trucks, assisted areas in the TV Legazpi Coastal Road, Bugtong Road, Daang Maharlika Highway, the National Highway in Barangay Namantao in Peña Francia. And 7 days after, we were able to help Albay by fixing 128 broken and leaning poles, 336 down primary and secondary lines, and 519 power lines corrected. Some of our crews who helped sa Albay po. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. For the information of our listeners, siguro, matanong ko ang MEA, is there a way we could do away with wooden posts sa mga electric cooperatives? Dahil pagdating ng bagyo, wasak talaga ito.
It's been a while that we have been doing it. Actually, the NEA, the electric co-ops are to submit its capex plan to ERC. And for the technology of the poles, it's technology neutral. They could actually use concrete, steel, or wood. Lately, through the years, they've been using steel because it's easier to carry, and there is a lag ban in the Philippines that started it all. So no wood poles from I think 5 years hence.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sa MERALCO, ano yung lessons learned kay Glenda, Joe?
Well, yung difference siguro, Sir Melo, na nakita namin doon, nung sa milenyo kasi, most of the facilities that have been Also affected ay dahilan dun sa mga tarpaulin ng mga billboards. So ang nangyari ngayon, medyo mas napabilis yung restoration sa Glenda. Hindi na naging balakid yung mga tarpaulin na tumatama dun sa aming mga linya. Matapos ma-roll up yon ng mga billboard operators, tapos yung close coordination as well with the MMDA and the local government units in the area. Kaya lang dun sa south talagang yung devastation po nitong si Glenda, siguro matuturing namin na mas malakas pa yung naging damage kung kukumpara kay Milenio.
Okay. In peso terms, wala tayo?
Rough figures meron kami pero wala, it just escapes me right now. But all of this will be borne by Meralco.
And it will be reported sa SEC, right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Yan?
Does NEA draw from the missionary and electrification component of our bill?
NEA, no. No. We take our budget from the GAA.
General appropriations. Yes. Question? Yan? A part of, okay. Mukhang maliwanag yung ating discussions ngayon, ano? So, final words from our guests. What are we to expect from NEA? Ano pang aasahan natin sa mga electric cooperatives nationwide under your supervision?
Well, just recently, the law strengthening NEA has been passed. So all the co-ops under the CDA before is now under us. And we're specifically, for all the 119 ECs, we're specifically, our mandate is to ensure that they, technically, their projects are sound. They will be financially viable even if they will source loans from other banks. And institutionally, they will have less problems, meaning less brownouts. If for a consumer, there's a reason why you have no electricity, madali natin maibabalik. And basically for the consumers to be happy.
Thank you very much. From Meralco. Joe?
Well, marami pa tayong pinaghahanda ang Bagyo Melo at kasama na rin dyan yung paghahanda natin na makaresponde sakaling tamaan muli yung ating mga facilities. Siguro yung mga initiatives natin on energy efficiency, yung interruptible load program, at yung mga iba pang makakapagpagaan sa ating mga consumers in terms of ensuring na yung kanilang binabayad sa Meralco ay sabihin na nating reasonable cost na na-enjoy nila sa mamamagitan ng paggamit ng kuryente.
Let's hear from the Department of Energy, si Ms. Luningning Baltazar, please. What are we to expect from the Department of Energy?
Well, as presented earlier, we will continue the initiatives to address yung expected shortages during the summer months. And also, we will exhaust all efforts to facilitate yung mga investments. Currently, we are looking at having a one-stop processing of all this together with the other government agencies so that we can fast-track all these projects.
Thank you very much. Doon sa mga kapatid natin sa media, pakiiwan lang ng email addresses nyo para maipadala namin yung presentations. Pakibigyan na lang po kay Sky Ortigas. I'd like to thank all our guests who took time out to be with us. Nakalulungkot, wala yung taga National Power Corporation. Kasama natin si OIC Chief ng Power Market Development Division ng DOE, si Ms. Luningning Baltazar, si Norman Vincent Martirez, isa po namang research specialist ng Department of Energy, si Zaldarriaga at Lawrence Fernandez ng Meralco, si Roderick Padua at Ray Cuevas ng National Electrification Administration. Let's all hope that we have better times ahead. Maraming salamat po. Magandang araw sa ating lahat. Thank you.